Hello, I'm back today to make a layout that uses a predominantly black background. Sorry, this is the March challenge prompt from UK Scrap Addicts, and I thought I'd have a go. I do like a bit of black background sometimes. It's quite nice, and sort of like if you use nice bright colours, it can make the colours quite pop off the page. So I've chosen to cut my black down as I want to use this the BU paper from Pinkfresh Studio as a frame around the black. So I've cut my black down just a little bit smaller than I would usually, just because of the flowers around the frame. I want to get as many of them in as I can, and the colours that are in them. And so I'm just gutting that paper so that I've got that other piece to use at another time. That obviously won't be seen behind the black there. What I'm going to do now is I've got some gesso and one of my thicker paint brushes there. This is the Daler Rowney gesso is the one I use. I just find it dries well, it sits well on the paper, so that's my preference. So all I'm going to do is just do some horizontal stripes with the gesso, not too thick. I'm just going to brush them on and then leave them to dry for a bit while I decide on which photo I'm going to use with it. So the two I've got is one at one of the MotoGP racetracks, or there's one of me and Rob on one of our trips to Italy. I've gone with that one just because the one with the racetrack was quite red, and I'm using oranges and pinks in the background paper. So just giving the gesso a little helping hand in drying, using the heat gun. As you can see, I'm not keeping it all in one place. I'm not overheating the gesso, otherwise it can sort of bubble up if you do that, and obviously it can warp the card as well if you sort of concentrate the heat in one place. So I thought, just to sort of take the starkness out of the white, I'm just going to use my Vicki Boutin colour wheel inks on some packaging and use the stencil brushes. And I'm just going to use just parts of the flower stencil I've got there, just to add some coloured bits to the gesso stripes. So I don't want to cover it all, and I don't want to go too heavy with it, but I just want to sort of just give a little bit of pop of colour of the colours that are in the papers I'm using. So I originally bought the BU collection from Lottie Loves Paper to make Rob's Christmas present with, and I've used it for that, and I've got quite a bit left over, which I am going to use throughout the year to make our sort of yearly journal. But I thought I'd just use some of it on this. And the photo that I eventually chose there was from one of our travels to Italy a couple of years ago, when we went to Lake Como and took the boat across the lake to Bellagio, and in Bellagio we caught this little land train type thing, which was a bit sort of touristy, and just took you around the island and showed you all the sights without having to try and, well, there is no other way of getting around there really, because it's all little tight roads and bends, and it was the easiest way to sort of see the whole of the village without having to climb loads of steps or walk up lots of hills. So as you can see, I'm just adding a few other another colour, just the greens with the leaves to there as well, using the stencil brush. As you can see, just at the top of my paper there, I've got a wet wipe, and I just use it just to dab the brush on. It just sort of like dampens the brush and just helps pick up the ink colours a little bit better. With the Vicki Boutin inks, they are quite a sticky ink. They're not that watery. They don't react that well to water, which is why I'm using these with the brush. I'm just going to get another piece of packaging for the pink to bring that in. So yeah, the wet wipe just helps to just dampen the brush enough that it won't sort of react too much with the ink, but just helps blend the ink in when you're brushing it in as well. So this stencil I'm using is from Dear Lizzie, and it's brilliant for sort of a whole 12 by 12 backgrounds, or as I'm doing now, I'm just picking out pieces of the stencil that I quite like the look of, just to cover up some of that white, as I said. So it's quite a nice versatile stencil, that one. I usually use it with my air gun, which I must get out at some point again soon. So yeah, so there we are. We're going to mount that onto the frame now. And as you can see, I'm using my ATG gun for that, and the tape in there is pretty strong. So once it's down, I can't move it. So I use it when I know that it's definitely something that I'm not going to need to move again. So I'm just going to back the photo with a couple of the other papers from the same collection from Pinkfresh. I'm sort of going for a couple of sort of subtle tones to match Rob's camo Pacamac that he's got on there to start with. And then there's also one that sort of like reflects the colours in my top, and the other colours in the background paper anyway. So it's now deciding whether I want it in the corner or in the middle, and I think I quite prefer it in the middle because we're both looking straight out as well, so there's no sort of like visual point anywhere else on the page for that. And these little 2x2, 1.5 by 1.5 squares were part of another sort of cut apart paper in the same range, which I cut apart to make some tokens for Rob. So these were like the leftovers. So what I'm going to do is just sort of fussy cut some of these out, but instead of watching me fussy cut them all, I've sort of just fast forwarded to the end of where I finished the fussy cutting, and then I'm going to add some other elements in there as well. I've got lots of little bits of die cuts which I've got from friends, and I thought they'd be quite nice to sort of just contrast against the black underneath the coloured embellishments as well. So I've just sort of cut them out. But as I've realised watching this back, all the cutting I've been doing is actually off screen. This is because I've moved the camera down slightly, because where it was before I kept hitting my head on it and I'm making it shake. So I moved it down, which has obviously narrowed the sort of like the field of vision of what you can see of my cutting mat. So I think I don't know whether I need to play with that a little bit just to sort of widen it out a bit, because otherwise I am doing a lot of stuff off of screen and you can't actually see all of my working area. So you might have noticed then I've only put the tape in the centre of my photo. This is just so that I can then slip things underneath the edges without having to sort of lift it all back up again. So I'm just using my Zig glue pen to go around the die cut shapes as it's nice and fine, just to add enough glue on there just to stick it down without there being too much on the thing. But as you can see, I've got some on the mat there, so I'll just give it a wipe with a wet wipe. Then I think I need to do the leaves as well, which I've now made the surface wet, so I just grab a piece of packaging just to put that on to put the glue on. So now I'm just going to stick the other embellishments on the top. And I do like a little bit of sort of dimension on the layouts, but not too much that it sort of bulks it out too much. So I've just added a couple of little foam squares to the bird there, just to sit on top of the camera, and I'll add one on one of the embellishments down there as well. So as you can see, I can just slip things underneath the edges of the photos and the mats, because I haven't added tape all the way around the outside. So I think we're just about done. I'm just having a look through a couple of my ephemera boxes just to see if there was anything else, and I just need a title now. So I'm just going through sort of my titles box. I quite like that, but I don't like the brownness of it, and I didn't want to do any painting today, so I'm not going to go with that. And I actually find this little one which says "Love this life." That's perfect to finish the page off. I add a couple of details with a white pen at the end, but that's it, that's my page done.